impossible to know everything about anything and thus we remain perpetually curious and imperfections.
This is our flag and our mascot, Franklin. The lightning bolt represents the receipt of knowledge, the enlightenment of illumination. Right.
So, starting with this picture, we're just going to look at like 5 pictures here. This is man rolling 1 month after being battered. It says, too far away from that now. But this picture to me, knowing what I know about trauma, I think immediately the essence of trauma is disassociation. And when I'm looking at her, I'm thinking she's most likely in some level of disassociation, most likely not really there, not very conscious in her body, even though her body is bloodied up. And the disassociation, we kind of learned about that going back to Richard Livingston. He was this explorer, and he was in areas where there were lions and tigers and stuff that could possibly attack him. And he found that when a person gets attacked, and presumably an animal as well, if you shake a person hard enough, they disappear. You disassociate. You do that to protect yourself, and then that part of the body, it's kind of become numb. You know, it comes back over time. But I think of this when I look at this picture, this is 1 month after this process, and thinking, you know, what I know about my own trauma, that this is going to be like a very long process of probably like re-entering that exact moment. Okay. So, and also I had the idea that people could also say different adjectives that they thought of these pieces of art. And if they're not into it, that's fine. But I'll just give you my impression, and then if people want to throw out different things that they think of, that would be cool. So in this image, thinking about trauma, I know that this is Frida Kahlo, and she experienced this accident, and at that point, you know, she probably was not aware of her body at all, and yet this very horrific, you know, thing happened, and the act of painting this, I think it's, you know, it's very transformative to go to that exact place, that exact thing that happened, and explore that. And yeah, that's basically what I think of that. Does anyone want to share any other things that they have to say? Short, sort of. It's absolutely fine. Okay. So this next one, this is Kara Walker. And I just wanted to bring this one to talk about, you know, everyone experiences trauma. There's no one that hasn't. The being born is traumatic, and that event alone can produce a lot of things for a lot of people, and you know, it's something you can explore in therapy for a long time or whatever. But this artist, she explores a lot of sexual trauma. She explores a lot of racial trauma, the trauma of living in America, where we have this past of slavery, and it's not really talked about or seen that much, and it's a trauma that we kind of all share. Of course, different people affecting differently. Okay, now this one, I've got to say, makes me the most happy. I see this one, and I think this is just a picture of the rage that happens after a trauma. I mean, this is just, you know, you just want to write this on the walls, you know. there's a devil inside of me. There's this rage. It gets trapped. It can't come out. And for me, there's various traumatic events in my life, but there's two main ones that kind of absolutely shaped who I was as a human. And I was in high school during the first one. I was 14, and I remember thinking that there wasn't a place to put all that rage in a normal system. There wasn't a way for it. And then becoming a high school teacher, I worked with lots of students from West Africa that had been child soldiers and had experienced a lot of trauma. And yet we, as teachers, we weren't really allowed to know those stories. We were supposed to focus on the academics. I mean, we did get to know a lot of them, but there just was this sense for me when I was a teenager that this rage was not acceptable there. And I eventually dropped out of high school, but I just love this. Okay, now this one, the mattress performance. People are probably familiar with this performance. I love this one because, again, thinking of carrying this trauma, she is physically carrying the mattress, which is the weight, and taking it to all her classes. It's there with her. Whether she carried that mattress or not, that is going to be there with you right after that traumatic event. And everyone has to see it, and I'm happy for that. Okay, and then we're getting into the 90s stuff here. So this is Kimbra Fowler. She sewed her vagina together for a 1992 film by Richard Kern. It's called Sewing Circle. And I made a film about her, and after this picture, we're gonna look at a little clip from the film. She's talked about this act a lot. Of course, it's kind of like the one that she's most known for, most famous for, or whatever. And she said that she basically felt that there were a lot of people trying to own her body at that time, trying to assign things onto her body. And in order to reclaim her very own body, she sewed her vagina shut. So that was that. Of course, she took it out afterwards. It's a performance. And I just want to show you I don't know what I did. Don't use that or something. Okay. Sound.
Well, I would just basically like to penetrate.
Can people hear that?
Is money an issue? Would you like to make lots of money?
Absolutely. But like I said before, you have to make the best use of what's available, and you still have to do your work if there's no money around. I think that's important. Not to get too discouraged if there's no funds.
It's Kimbra, and I'm here in my studio preparing for some Karen Black shows in February of the year 2006. And usually I have to prepare my studio. That usually involves me painting everything this color, which is red. I need a foundation because it's such a mess in here usually. Instead of cleaning, I usually just repainting everything.
She reminded me of the early surrealists and the kind of 19th century sublime artists, where their whole life was actually an art piece, and the canvases that came out of it, and the sculpture that came out of it was just part of the process. She really couldn't care less about people think it's really done for her and for her mind. And I think that's a really admirable thing in this expensive city. During a time when the government doesn't really encourage artists
happening at the same time as the Riot Grrl thing was happening here, early 90s. There were different kind of flavors to it. I mean, we had grunge here, and in New York, you know, there was other stuff going on, but there are the similarities of just kind of making art at that time. You know, there were a lot of galleries and theaters where people would just come in with these crazy ideas and perform these things like what she did, the standing on the head and having colored eggs cracked on her vagina. That came out of that time period. So, so I think one thing that, you know, it is similar or is a reoccurrent theme in a lot of these works by female artists is, you know, talking about the body, using the body in different ways. And this kind of illustrates the feeling of, well, the body, your body as a female person, it's kind of a battleground. It's legislated, you know, it's, it can feel like that. And then another reason, I guess, is because like this is a Guerrilla Girls poster about how, you know, there's very few artists in the modern art sections that are women, but women are used as muses quite often. So again, you know, the women kind of feeling like that's the value is having this body. Okay, this is kind of like the most famous little line about feminist art and I guess Riot Grrl too. The personal is political. So taking these personal stories and putting them out there, not necessarily for commercial gain, but as just the act of doing it, the act of putting it out there. And let's see, like this is something that I feel like I would have seen a lot of in the early 90s. I know people that did this. It was a way to kind of take revenge on certain people that seemed untouchable, you know, different people within like the punk rock scene. A lot of what Riot Grrl came out of was feeling that there wasn't a way for female musicians to be in the scene, and there was a lot of writing and spray paint stuff about different people that were in these rock scenes that perpetrated rape and things like that. And then taking it to the place where you're just writing directly on your body, which was also done a lot at that time, just writing slogans on the body. So this is the scene that I came out of living here in Portland, and I mean, I didn't really know that it would be encompassed kind of as Riot Grrl later. It was just kind of, like I said, there were similar things going on in New York. It was kind of like a lot of people were embracing identity politics and were open to this sort of thing. And you know, and they're not now as much. I just did this search for this cover, and I just found it really strange that just to put in angry women in Google, it was really hard to find this because most of the pictures, they weren't actually authentically women being angry. They were just actresses, and they were all the like things that you would use for like a conference or whatever. So of an actress being angry. And so it just is like there wasn't much place, you know, and then here's this image, and this was just such a huge influential book to me and to a lot of people at that time, with all these artists that had done all these amazing things, Kathy Acker and Demon de Galas, Bell Hooks, anyway. And then this is kind of another way that the Riot Grrl aesthetic of writing slogans on your body, taking pictures of them. Okay. So, yeah, the years that I'm speaking of are early 90s. It was also kind of a time when punk rock broke into the mainstream. That was 1991, the year that punk broke, when people suddenly started caring about, you know, seeing the Ramones and Nirvana at the same time, and alternative suddenly became, you know, mainstream, with Nirvana especially. So this is the context where I go into my personal story. So while this was going on, I met this person, Molly. Molly's the one that's blonde. She was known by many different names, Molly Mack, Molly Murder, but most commonly Molly 16, because she was a teenager and she was, that name was kind of given to her like, well, don't take that person too seriously. That's Molly 16. She's 16 years old, you know, like she's a teenager. That's, we were kind of, as teenagers, hanging out with these people that were just like slightly older. So, so yeah, that was how that name came about. But she was, you know, a very influential person to my life in many ways, in a lot of ways revolving around trauma. At this time that we met, you know, I was 14. I don't have a picture of this. I wish I had pictures like 30 days before the rape, 30 days after, you know, and that I had made that some sort of art piece that I could look at. But it was through, I was reading a lot of Henry Miller at the time, and I decided to go downtown and drink a lot. I was 14 years old, and you know, I got picked up and I was raped, and I didn't really know how to process that. And so I told Molly, we were just becoming friends, and that process of telling Molly was the real foundation of our friendship, because I felt like this was something you should know about Molly just by looking at her, that this was someone that had experienced a lot of trauma. I mean, it was just coming off of her. You know, people don't often act like they need attention so much unless, you know, something has happened to them. So this is me after the rape that had happened, and I kind of was trying to, you know, shave off my eyebrows and be a different sort of creature, you know, hoping that maybe I wouldn't be preyed upon again or whatever. So we became very close friends, and you know, our birthdays were like a week apart. We were in high school. We switched to another high school. We went to MLC. But Molly, she didn't have family. She was a DHS kid because she'd been taken from her father's home. He'd threatened her with a gun. So her life was really hard. It was really hard as a kid, you know, to have no one, to not have an aunt or, you know, any sort of person that cares. And so, you know, she had a lot of friends, and And she thought about suicide quite a bit from that beginning point, from 14. So this is an example just kind of to show the difference of, this was one of my zines which never went out there. It was just something you make and then I just copied it. But no one got to read it. But it was just, the act of making it. A lot of things just kind of run into each other. They don't make sense. And this was Molly's. Molly's were much more refined. This is the cover of one. But again, they were dealing with traumatic subjects. This is this woman getting raped and talking about how the x-rays closed, so the boys have to have something to do. And yeah, on our 14th birthday, we both got guitars and we were listening to all this music going around, but Molly was really the one. I mean, she had a 7-inch of Bleach in her lunchbox. She played it for me, and it was just, we were just off. I mean, these things were coming out right then. There were shows a lot of the time, seeing Nirvana, like the Fox Theater, and being at the X-Ray every day. So just kind of like being in the middle of this movement. And for Molly, she lived with Kathleen Hanna, and she played in a band with her, and she did all the artwork for their album. But, she still didn't have family, and this is like her suicide note, and this is another note to me. And, it didn't matter that much. She got to meet her idol in one sense. She got to meet Courtney Love, but it didn't matter that much what happened. There was always just this wanting to die. And that's something that I really, am exploring through the film and don't want to get too much into here, but just to say that became the second traumatic event. The first being the sexual assault, and then this happening when Molly died. She shot herself with her father's gun. So I'm going to quickly read just 2 paragraphs. And I've edited this a little bit, but because it was written with no punctuation whatsoever. 1998, February. I just moved away from California back to Portland. I got here in February, which is the ugliest month. This is the time of the year when I'm feeling the most hopeless. After 3 months of solid rain and wind, it seems like the end of the world. Like time has stopped and fallen off the branches in cold, wet seconds, and we're all made to live forever inside our homes, reading books and smoking cigarettes while the rest of the world lives. Let's skip this paragraph. In October of 1995, my best friend Molly shot herself. There's nothing that has affected me and set me apart from other people as the event of her dying. It's been 3 years now, and I'm only starting to openly deal with my feelings about her death. If I wasn't a junkie, maybe I would have gained some skills to deal with the pain instead of the needle, but I can't really help that, I guess. Lately, I've been so angry, I've had to take these long walks until I calm down. I've walked all around Portland in the rain, just trying to save myself from destruction. It doesn't always work to talk to people. I have a hard time knowing the line between dumping on them and using people like a vampire would until they're sick of my problems. So I just, after Molly died, I went off the races with heroin, and it became a, perpetuating cycle of the things that I had to do to get the heroin created more trauma. So then I had to stay high, so I didn't think about that trauma or the original traumas that I was trying to use over. This is me hitchhiking. This is in Texas. So, I just tried to be as far away from Portland as I could for a really long time. And then Eventually, I came back and I got clean. So when I did get clean, I'm just going to go back to this part, that if you shake a human hard enough, they disappear. The process of disassociation. At that time, you know, getting clean, I really felt that I couldn't live in Portland. It was too much. I wasn't ready to handle all of the trauma that existed everywhere. And so, you know, my plan was to move as far away as possible to go to New York. And, you know, that plan worked because people only can deal with things when they're ready to deal with them, you know. So I moved to New York. That's me in front of Kembra's house. She helped me a lot. And then came back here. And this is a corn dog box of all of some of the stuff that you saw earlier, pictures and the suicide note and all that. So I opened this box, you know, it had been 20 years, and you know, I had never even really read that suicide note. I'd never looked at it. I mean, it was just too painful. It was just not something I could do. And then I realized while reading this, that it's like the closer that it could be to me, the closer that I could live in that exact moment, it's like the more that I could get out of it. That I could kind of create my own sort of therapy in a way. And which is really true, because like the first time that I looked at that suicide note, I mean, it took like a month to me to like take it out, and then now I can look at it and not cry or whatever. And I mean, and these are the positive aspects, I think, of, you know, why do you create art from trauma? What is it for? I mean, some of those beginning images you might not want to own. You might not want to have in your house because they're not, you know, what it's thought of as beautiful or whatever. But for me, I felt the process of just reconnecting to my body, to all these things that happened. I became, like, immediately felt like I am a full self. Like, this is like, I'm now like authentic in this way that had not happened for years. So, and that's basically it. I'm going to show now the clip of the film that I'm creating. So.
Molly just had that thing.
When's she gonna be like a rock star, you know?
What she told me more than once was she didn't trust anyone over 30.
Some people were just like, whoa, she's intense. Someone that's kind of difficult to be friends with, and the confidence is almost a compensation for all this pain.
What do you think her problem is? I don't know.
Molly had a really difficult home life.
I do remember her being really unhappy, and that's what led my friend Becky and I to sort of look into if it would be possible for us to legally adopt her.
She told me that her father would get drunk and threaten her with a loaded gun.
She was raised in foster care.
Her mother was an alcoholic and had lost custody of Molly when Molly was 2.
I was 22, and my friend was like 23, and it didn't seem like it was possible.
I met Molly in high school, and we were both going through really difficult things in our life. We kind of were there for each other at that time. I was a teenager and had just experienced this assault, and I didn't even really know that it was wrong. When I talked to Molly, she was like, yeah, that's wrong, and we're gonna do something about it.
People always
always called Molly Little Courtney Love. People called her that because they thought she was obnoxious, loud, out of control, emotional, crazy.
She really, really liked Courtney Love.
Do you hate Riot Grrls?
No! Kurt thought of the words. It came from a metallic KO Iggy Pop Search and Destroy record. Come on, you want to riot? Come on, let's riot!
Riot Grrl movement was about feminism in music.
Why women weren't encouraged to play music and sort of subtle sexism that happened. There were meetings and fanzines and kind of popping up everywhere.
A zine is sort of like halfway between a diary and a magazine, and it was also the only way you could reach out to other people, like, you know, like-minded people in your area or in the world. Before the internet, you know, you had to entertain yourself a lot more.
Her zine was called Rock and Roll Fantasy.
To me, her zines would fit into that time period where there's a lot of anger. Say they did a rant and rave on one page, record reviews or show reviews, not limited by what other people think, you know, kind of pure expression. It's just this unbridled sort of rage against the world.
Okay, transforming trauma into art. So that is, I guess, what I have to say about that. And I'm open to questions. Okay.
How much, like making this movie, how much would you say it's, for you personally, it's reaching out to other people, showing them what you experience?
Well, it is totally my own personal therapy, but I mean, like when this person at first said that to me, no, you can stay there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was like, that's not what it is. But it is totally that. It is. I guess I didn't expect that it was going to be that for other people, but people have told me when I go to interview them, they're like, oh, you know, this is. You know, a lot of them, it's not easy. It's not like a fun interview. I kind of hate doing to people. They usually tell me, I didn't know it was all there. It's just like, I just start crying afterwards. It's just, you know, locked. But yeah, so I guess both, yeah.
Do you reflect much on the fact that you spent more of your life with her than without her, or without her rather than with her?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like Molly was such a powerful character for me because, well, she was my best friend, which I don't feel like is something that everyone gets to have. If you do get to have one at some point in your life, it's a different feeling, I think, maybe than just like a friend, but like the friend that is like, no, I am yours. You know, I have your back all the time. That's the person you call. You don't hesitate, you know. And the value of that, I think over time, I've been, you know, very sad about the fact that there was no one that could replace that person, but then realizing like, well, not everyone gets to have that person anyway. So it's kind of like, yeah, that it's better to have loved than lost than, you know, never to have loved at all type of thing. But also I think that, I mean, and I hope to show some of this in the film, is, you know, through this process of not having her in my life, I mean, she's still in my life in that I felt that I had to incorporate her into who I was. Because she was kind of my protector, the person that was like, you know, no, this is wrong, what happened to you, and playing music and writing and making art, and I was doing those things, like I said, but no one could see them ever, and I could only show them to maybe her or something. So I had to incorporate all those things about her into my life and be them.
I have friends that I feel like this is happening to. Have you ever had anybody who you know that is experienced trauma, is disassociated with it, and then kind of stay disassociated forever?
Yes, yes. Well,
I guess it's kind of steep.
Yeah. Well, this is a really great book thing. Trauma is really strange. I got all my quotes really from this book, and it talks about that more. Some people don't have PTSD ever. You know, there's like 23% of people that do, and yet, yeah, I mean, everyone experiences trauma. So, and then the disassociating part kind of fading out later, and then kind of coming back into your body. That can happen, or it can't, and then you never have to deal with it, and that's fine. Yes.
So, what are your goals for this film? I mean, who's your expected audience?
Well, I mean, I hope. Right now, I'm thinking that my goal is TV, because I would like it to reach young people, and they don't generally go to film festivals or screenings or whatever. I'd like to kind of reach a real transient population. If it doesn't become TV, then I will kind of go and find those people on my own and show it to them. I think that because after Molly died, I started working in social services, started working in the first group home she was placed in Portland, and one of the girls there did the same thing. She also killed herself. It's very common in this group. I mean, it's a horrible life at that point to not have anyone, you know. And then our DHS system in Portland is specifically so bad. I mean, I answered the child welfare hotline, so I know that when someone calls a police officer with a really bad situation like Molly's was, oh, this person has a gun, they're threatening their child, they need to be taken away. There's a list of 4 or 5 people that are the foster people that are available at that time. And most of the time, that, you know, it's like they'll have one person that's like, I want babies, you know, 2 to 3 years old, male only. They're all very specific, none of them teenage girls. You know, they're not really that popular of a DHS kind of group. So then and then they get placed into an adjudicated youth kind of place where they're treated like what they did is wrong, and they didn't even do anything wrong. That's just the only place that they can go. Department of Human Services? Yeah. Sometimes it's Department of Health Services, depending on the state. Yeah, because I think it's something different.
DHS is Health and Human Services.
Okay, yeah. Did you?
Yeah. Going back, I was curious, like on reflection, is there a point where you think to yourself, like, where it was too late for Molly, like that she had become, you know, I don't know, that she had run out of options in terms of who could help her or whatever?
I don't know that I necessarily think it's too late. I mean, I'll go into the whole story in detail in the film of kind of what happened, that day. It was something I knew about. It was something that, you know, and that whole process, I mean, that's really difficult. That's kind of the crux of why I'm telling this is, you know, having that knowledge that someone's going to die, and then they do. But my feeling was that that's what she wanted. I mean, she wanted that. And there's another person that I interviewed that's also like a friend from that same time period, and her brother committed suicide also at the same age, 19. And they're Buddhist, and so they have a very Buddhist kind of feeling on it, that's okay, that was his time. He came, he taught us stuff, he left, you know. I try to take that myself.
Do you feel like through that process of you working with all of those kids, all those people, do you feel like there's any situation that you've been involved with that was where it was like, oh, this was like Molly's situation, like somebody made for themselves and this is a place in which like were you like, wow, that's great, like that made a difference or something? Did you have those kind of moments?
Working with the teenagers, I don't know because it's so in the moment, that type of work. It's like I might have felt like I did something for that day, but I don't know. I mean, and you're not supposed to know. I'm not supposed to call them out necessarily when I see them on the street now. Or, you know, it's like once that ends, that particular group home job or whatever, then that's over. And so I don't know what happened in the big context of their lives. So it's hard to say.
Do you get to share your story with other youth? Or is that also not allowed in these shares?
It's totally allowed most places. I mean, when I was a teacher, it's not, because it just doesn't, like I was saying, in the context of, okay, we need to teach them this stuff so that they can pass this test. You know, it's just like, it's like time. Okay, yeah, a big part of teaching is building that relationship. So if you had to tell that story to build that relationship, yes. But, you know, so much of it is the test. Yeah. But yeah.
Do you ever think about in the future possibly doing something to expose the inefficiency of DHS?
Well, there's a person that I'm going to interview, a representative, I believe, that's one of her main things. Because there's been several deaths lately. DHS had to pay out millions of dollars for all these wrongful deaths. So yeah, it's something that she's spearheading, and I mean, she's a politician. I like her a lot. I haven't interviewed her yet for this film, but I'm hoping to. Definitely. I mean, I didn't work within DHS or anything in other states. I worked in other states and other sort of things, but this one's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. Yeah. Okay, is there any others? Or? Okay, well, yeah, this is Jeffrey, and he's working with me, and he's going to say a couple things, and we're going to go over there.
I'm working with Amber as the producer for Rock and Fantasy. I've produced features primarily in my past, but this will be my first documentary. I've been working for a while. Really excited to see doing this, making it happen. So we have some stuff for sale. I've got some zines and some posters and stuff. If you'd like to come by and talk to me about that, I'll be in the back. And if you could just spread the word about what we're doing, and hopefully we'll get finished sooner than later.
with this talk, Forensic Blue 3, Behind the Scenes of Historical Guitar Restoration. The presentation will highlight the restoration of two of history's important classical guitars in the 1869 Francisco Gonzalez, more significantly in the 1888 Antonio de Torres. The presentation will also integrate some of the investigative methods used to understand the history of these guitars in a forensic sense, which was equally important in determining the proposed treatment. So should be really good. And let's have another round of applause for Sweet. And definitely go check out the table.